Parents, I think, they've had them there.
Right, morning everyone.
Morning, Jeff.
Reminder, just to do the house rules first, please switch off your mobile phones for silence. There are members of the public and press attending virtually, yeah, so if anybody is attending virtually, have you got anybody, Bev?
I don't think we have, Chair.
No, that's okay. We're going to turn off the microphones. The meeting is being recorded and will be available in due course on the council's YouTube channel. Please remember it's a formal meeting and therefore do not refer to each other by first names. There is no fire alarm planned, therefore if the fire alarm sounds, officers will direct you to the nearest exit from the meeting room onto the car park. Thank you very much. So, first item on the agenda, we have apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, received apologies from Councillor Wilkinson.
Yeah. Thank you. Members? Fine. To approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on 5th of June 2023, pages 5 to 12.
Happy to move.
Seconder? Seconded, thank you very much. All in favour? All in favour? Any against? Any abstention? Thank you, councillor Lane.
That's our pleasure.
Declarations of interest, item 4. Have I got any declarations of interest? We do have some declarations of interest.
Sorry, Chair, I think it's missed item 3.
What's that one? Oh, right, yeah. Item 3, items brought forward, which in the opinion of chair should be considered by the meeting as a matter of urgency. There are none. Item 4, declarations of interest.
Yes, Chair, I've received the following declarations of interest. Councillor Clayton has declared an other registrable interest in item 10 on the agenda. Councillor Peter Lever has declared an other registrable interest in item 8 on the agenda. And Councillor Peter Lever has declared a non-registrable interest in item 9 on the agenda. Councillor Peter Lever has declared an other registrable interest in item 10 on the agenda, Chair.
Thank you. Can I go in?
As a trustee of the Bridge Trust, I ought to declare a personal interest in item 9.
Yeah, that item's to know.
Chair, for me, under item 3, could you perhaps mention to members that we've got the informal briefing quickly on a couple of items after the formal meeting?
All right, yeah, members, if you can stay behind after the meeting, there is just a quick informal debrief that the chief executive would like to notify us of. So don't always got thanks. Councillor Knight?
Yes, please make a note that as with Councillor Price, I'm trustee of Bridge Trust and need to register an interest for item 9. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knight. And could I declare a personal interest in item 10 and item 12, as I know the James Brent, who is the developer of those sites, as he was the chairman of the NHS trust that I work at. So I'll just declare a personal one in there because I do know him. And also item 8, Future High Streets Fund, as it involves highways, as a member of Devon County Council. Please. I don't think there's any more, but I'll let you know. That's that. Right, thank you for that. So any more from members? No? Right, well, no.
Well, as you're there, I might as well declare the same interest that Ian just did as a Devon County councillor.
In item 4, yeah. Item 8.
I went to school, Parish Church Infant School.
Yeah.
Right, so item 5, to agree the agenda between part A and part B. All okay?
Agree.
Yeah, all agreed, that's agreed, thank you. Item 6, performance of financial management quarter 4, 2022 to 2023, pages 13 to 8. Mr. Triggs.
Thank you, Chair. Members, I'd like to introduce Tony Rumble, our Finance Manager. Tony's going to take you through the detailed report and then we're both here to answer any questions that you may have. Over to you, Tony.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. I'm here to present the quarter 4 and outturn performance report. The recommendations are detailed in your report in 2.1 to 2.6 on page 13. Firstly, I'd like to talk you through the revenue elements of the budget position. So the revenue budget for 22-23 was approved at full council on the 23rd of February 22 at 13.7 million. As at the 31st of March 22, it is pleasing to report that the final outturn position of the budget surplus is £693,000, which is an overall movement of £674,000 from the last forecast for quarter 3. A detailed breakdown of these movements are shown in Appendix A on pages 23 to 24. The movements will be mainly attributed to, firstly, adverse variances, benefit subsidy 116,000, annual market income down by 40,000, and Yelland appeal, cost of award provision 151,000. And then we have some favourable variances of temporary accommodation 99,000, planning fees 110,000, contribution from the crematorium 41,000, business rates and fall in income 395,000, interest receivable 136,000, and additional various government grants for 180,000. With inflation still a real issue, we've replenished the budget management reserve to a balance of £815,000. This has been funded from the favourable variances above and a transfer from the in-year collection fund reserve. This will provide us with resilience going forward to cover inflationary pressures during 23-24. The financial outturn for Green Lane Centre for 22-23 produced a net return of £291,000. This had included the borrowing costs. This is a positive return for the council and was in line with our original forecasting. The collection fund reserve includes a year-end residue balance of £427,000. This is to protect us against any future volatility. From the revenue budget surplus of £693,000, it is proposed to set aside amounts into the following earmarked reserves. Office Technology Fund, £120,000 to fund capital business cases. Repairs Fund, £214,000, again, this is to fund capital business cases. Budget Management Reserve, £279,000 to mitigate 23-24 inflationary pressures. And Insurance Reserve, £80,000 to mitigate against 23-24 higher insurance costs. As of the 31st of March, the council's external borrowing was £3 million. The time of the future borrowing is dependent on how the authority manages its treasury activities. And due to the borrowing internally during 22-23, this resulted in a reduction in the loan interest of £275,000, which we placed into a treasury management reserve to help mitigate against higher interest rates as we move through 23-24. Earmark reserves and balances can be found in Appendix B. These are on pages 25 to 28. Moving on to capital. 22-23 capital programme is attached as Appendix B on pages 31 to 34. The actual spend for 22-23 was just over 7.5 million, and this resulted in a carry forward of underspend to 23-24 of £1.9 million. Included in the carry forward above, the 22-23 capital programme is now, so 23-24, 23,177,000, 24-25, 5,324,000, and 25-26, 95,000. We're also planning further variations of just under £5 million, and these are proposed in the 22-23 budget, and 399,000 to the 25-26 budget. The detail of these can be found in 4.4.8 of your report on pages 18 to 19. These changes take the revised capital programme for 23-24 to 25-26 to just under 34 million. The detail of these schemes and how this is made up can be found in Appendix E on pages 43 to 78. Release of funds can be seen in 4.4.13 on pages 19 and 20. Debt management and general debtors are detailed in sections 4.5 and 6. Appendix F is a new addition to this report, which sets out our 5 programmes and the projects sitting beneath them, with updates on progress to date. Nina is here to provide a little more context and information in relation to this, but before I hand over to Nina, are there any questions on the report so far?
Afternoon. One very quick one, obviously one that I feel gives you back myself, maybe, is the 151,000 for the fund keeper. Is that's still an estimate as opposed to?
Yes, Chair, it's a provision we've made based on the cost of all claim that came in. We're still challenging some of the numbers associated with the figures contained within that, and we'll be going back with a reduced without prejudice offer to hopefully mitigate that down to a lower figure. We've made a provision based on the worst case scenario of the claim that's come in, but we're hoping to get that number down. We're also looking to get the contribution from the county council because there was an element of highways contained within the cost of the as well. So the net effect on the council will be much lower than the provision that we made.
Thank you.
Yeah, could I ask, I mean, are the how definite is this county contribution?
Not definite.
That's what I thought.
Right.
Do we have to declare them?
No, because at the end of the day, it's the district council that's been ordered to pay the costs. Ordered to pay the costs. We've just been having informal discussions with the county of the highway element, but there is no certainty of any at the moment.
Councillor
Chairman, with respect to Darren Key, I mean, the local plan was in place. And if they follow the local plan was followed, we wouldn't be having this conversation today. And also, I believe you got to the offset, didn't you? Did you allow some sort of funding towards Darren Key as part of yours? Going the wrong way. I think you did offset some funds aside for the cost within your budget.
We made provision within the 23 outturn. So last year's financial statements have now included this provision. So that in a sense provides for the worst case scenario. If the settlement obviously is lower than that, and that will provide a credit on the budget this year. But at the moment, we've incurred the costs as if it had happened in 22-23.
I didn't, Chairman, it says favourable variance of 110,000, which is actually, but it's not very favourable when we're actually paying out 151,000 towards an appeal, is it? Thank you.
Over to Nina.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, members. This report has been slightly revised. We took a report on the corporate plan delivery highlight report to strategy and resources in January, and a decision was made to amalgamate the programmes also with the financial data to give us a wider picture of organisational health. We've got 5 programmes that are currently running: customer focus and digital by design, environmental enhancement, housing and community safety, regeneration and economic growth, and organisational development, with the overarching theme of achieving financial security supported by the commercialisation strategy. Coupled with that report, we've also got a revised suite of performance measures and a refreshed performance management framework, which you will have found in your induction pack. These measures have been categorised as key results and reportable key performance indicators. The new indicators were only put in place from April this year, so you won't actually see any results in those at the moment, and they'll come forward as part of our next reporting period. That suite's fairly flexible. It's there to be challenged if there are indicators or measures that you'd actually like to see in this report, which will reflect the health of the organisation. Then we'd very much welcome that communication and that challenge to that suite that we've got there already. And that may provide you with additional assurance, knowing that we're actually delivering against the priorities that we've set in the corporate plan. Another addition, Tony and I have been working together, so next time in the report,
the capital allocation and any external funding will be noted against those projects also. So in the pyramid that you've seen on page 44, that sets out how our activities flow. These are the priorities for the corporate plan, followed by the strategies, then programmes and projects that deliver against a number of priorities and the decisions taken during the life cycle of those programmes. So the purpose of the appendix is to provide members with a high-level overview of all the projects sitting under those programmes, and assurance that progress is being made across the areas and in turn delivering against your corporate plan priorities. The risks associated with those projects are fed back up to the senior management team through activity reports and fed through to the governance structure. And where we feel there's more detail that members need to be provided with or decisions made, they come as separate reports. And we've got 3 of those on the agenda today. You'll be very pleased to hear that I don't wish to go through 37 pages, but if there's any questions you've got on the project, I'll either be able to answer those for you today or take it away and come back with some answers. Thank you very much.
Janina, members, any questions? Obviously, I think it's great for forming a framework and informing where we are on the corporate objectives. I do know that we will be setting, going forward, new corporate objectives where members will all be involved at some stage. And I think it gives a much more clearer vision to us as members to hold officers to account for priorities and the time frame. Any questions from members? Councillor Knight, David Knight.
Yes, thank you. As waste and recycling lead, the leader and myself have walked around the departments and areas, and it's very clear from talking to the officers and staff that the baling machine or the increased capacity there is working really well. But obviously, I'd like that somehow to, because obviously new members won't be aware of what happened there and how that performance is actually sort of fed back into this or fed back at a future meeting or any reports, because it's clear that the baler's working excellent, but new members won't even be aware that we actually purchased the baler, and that performance there is enhancing that department.
I think I'm right in saying that baler is being leased at the moment, and as part of the infrastructure project, where there's a £3 million allocation, there will be a new baler. So
Right, okay, so that'll then be released. Okay.
Yeah, at the moment. So part of the wider scheme, we're putting, I think there's a pre-application at the moment for the infrastructure works, new building down at the start, because it's pretty old, that modular building. I think there's a few buckets where the leaks are coming through. So there's a wider piece of work. And you'll see on page 65, we've got those key results that we'll be looking to achieve, and they're being driven by national targets as well in terms of recycling and reuse of our materials. So that investment in that infrastructure will allow us, and we're also waiting for clear guidance from government on the outcomes.
Okay, that's brilliant, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any more?
Chair, just to say, it really is easy, it's easy to read, well laid out, and you can find any of the issues that anybody ever asks you publicly or parish council wise. And it's nice to see it linked like this.
Yeah.
I'd echo that, Mr. Chairman.
Donina, great piece of work. Obviously the project management for us members to see instantly where we are with projects, so we're able to change or see where we are on track, deliver. I think it's a real good tool for informing us. So I think the recommendation is to
Check the recommendation is on page 13, 2.1 to 2.6 for member approval.
I'm happy to move.
Yeah, I've got a second there, Councillor Bateman, thank you. All in favour? Thank you. Thank you very much for that report. Thank you. Item 7, Annual Treasury Management Report 2022 to 23, pages 81 to 92. Director of Resources and Deputy Chief Executive, Mr. Triggs. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, introduce Alan Taylor, our Head of Governance, who's going to present the Treasury Management Report to members.
Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, members. This is the Treasury Management Outturn Report for 22-23, which gives the members the information on the actual Treasury performance for the year. The table on page 83 of your agenda shows that as at the 31st of March 23, the capital financing requirement, our underlying need to borrow was circa 24 million, including the finance leases for our vehicles. 2 million was added to the CFR last financial year, but it was during 21-22 that 17 million was added. This borrowing need related to the building of the new leisure centre and the purchase of Greenlands. Despite this high borrowing need, external borrowings from the PWLD remained at 3 million for the year, with improved use of internal reserves and cash flows for internal borrowing. This resulted in a saving of 275,000 on our interest payable budget. And as Tony mentioned previously, that's now been placed into a Treasury Management Reserve to help the future higher borrowing costs. The average borrowing rate for the year on our borrowing loans was 2.01%. In terms of investments, the increasing bank rate did help improve investment returns during the year, with a total interest received 290,000 compared to the original budget of 35,000. The average rate of return on our investments was 1.5% compared to the benchmark rate of 2.2%, which tracks very closely the bank rate. I'd like to refer members back to the recommendation of section 2 of the report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Members, any questions? Councillor Lehman?
Yeah, just one of the borrowing improvement reserves. I understand there's a saving on paying interest rates on the works loan board, but what would we have foregone in terms of interest on keeping those reserves in the bank?
Yes, obviously, there is a cost to carry, so your investments, your borrowing rates at those times were much higher than what we received in terms of interest. So it would have actually been a sort of a net cost to the council. So we did some work with our external treasury advisors at the invite at that stage, and try to hold off that external borrowing. You're right, that point is now becoming a bit closer because our interest rates are going up compared to borrowing rates. So internal borrowing has been very good for us over the last couple of financial years. Will it be good going forward? Possibly not. That's the sort of thing keeping under review. We went out to borrow short term, we're looking at sort of 6% investments, but that's just for a couple of years. Investments sort of getting around that 5%. So yeah, definitely those gaps it's getting now.
Okay, thank you.
Right, no more questions. Can we approve the recommendation 2.1? The committee is asked to recommend the full council that the annual Treasury Management Report 2023 be noted.
I do apologise, I'm late attending all the rest of it. Have we dealt with the fact that the staffing budget looks brilliant, but the reason the staffing budget looks brilliant is because we haven't got any staff? We've dealt with that on this one, haven't we?
That was the last report.
Oh, is it?
So item 2.1,
Happy to move.
seconded. Councillor Bell, all in favour? Any abstentions? Any against? Yes, thank you. Item 8, Future High Streets Fund, Butchers Row, Cross Street, pages 93 to 24. Report by Place Property and Regeneration attached. Is you SQ?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If members are okay, I'll read through the report, starting on page 93 of your agenda. I know many of you know the detail around the Future High Streets Fund. If there are new faces in the room, I thought I should take you back through some of the history related to that project. So it's a central government fund administered by what was the MHCLG, now DELA, that seeks to support, renew and reshape high streets in a way that drives growth, improves experience and ensures future sustainability. The Future High Streets Fund project for Barnstaple focuses on 4 interventions: the Penny Market and Guildhall works, the acquisition and rejuvenation of 3637 Barnfield Street, access and reconfiguration of Queen Street Westwood Car Park, and the pedestrianisation and public realm improvements to Butchers Row and Cross Street. This report will focus on the intervention of Butchers Row and Cross Street. So the pedestrianisation of Butchers Row and Cross Street from 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. is the first element of the project, and then public realm improvements were seen as a key enhancement of the town, both to improve the visual amenities of the locality, to allow businesses to spill out onto the street, and to connect Bancourt Street via the High Street to the river. This element of the future High Street Fund package was envisaged to create traffic-free surfaces, allowing activity to spill out and create space for mini street markets and outdoor dining. We wanted to create an improved pedestrianised route to the river, which was considered previously to be an underused and neglected part of the town running parallel to the High Street. As members may be aware, and I'll touch on it in my next report, we've since been successful with the Cultural Development Fund, which will further enhance the riverfront and that includes the refurbishment of bridge chambers. Excuse me. In terms of progress of the Butchers Row Cross Street intervention, as set out in 4.4 of your report, that permanent traffic order for the pedestrianisation from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. has been secured and is implemented. That started from the temporary pedestrianisation that we saw through the pandemic, and then the permanent traffic order followed. Since then, the design team have produced a scheme to read the stage 3 for the public realm improvements to Butchers Row and Cross Street, and these show a level surface across both streets with an interconnecting element at the High Street. And that current scheme is appended at Appendix A to the report. We've had many challenges with this scheme, not least with the cost of it, and with ensuring that maintenance is reduced going forward. Those iterations have been shared with the Barnstaple Regeneration Board. We've also shared them with the businesses along both Butchers Row and Cross Street, with Devon County Council's Highway Authority, the local U3A accessibility group, and the Royal National Institute for the Blind. The U3A local accessibility group were generally positive about the proposals, and I've provided their feedback for you in full at paragraph 4.8 of the report. At 4.10, however, I've advised members of the concerns that the Royal National Institute for the Blind have raised with the project. And they consider that shared level space is not inclusive for people with sight loss, and they've referred us to the guidance that they provided. Again, that's set out in detail at 4.10. They advise us that local authorities must ensure that where street design proposals which do not address the points above which relate to the technical curve are not approved for installation until the accessibility issues are resolved. And they say until detectable curve are included in proposals. Since receiving that advice, officers invited representation from the RNLB to Barnstaple to consider the scheme, and that included showing them and taking them a tour on the shared space at the Strand, which you'll all be familiar with. They were really helpful and offered feedback, but remained fundamentally concerned with the loss of the curve as a detectable feature that separates the highway, and this concern is outside of those pedestrianised times. At 4.12, I'm just providing you with an update on where the Department of Transport are on shared spaces. There was a moratorium placed in 2018 while they reviewed the safety of this scheme, but no clear strategy has emerged since. And as I mentioned earlier, we've been working with DCC as Highway Authority since the beginning of this scheme, and what the County Council have provided us with their most latest advice at 4.12. So they say we've not seen anything further from DFT since 2018 on the lifting of that moratorium on shared space. So there's no definitive blanket position either way, as it would depend on the environment, location, traffic, pedestrian volume, conditions, etc. It's critical, of course, in terms of the response of the County Council as to whether they would go on to adopt this surface or not. We have also spoken to colleagues across the county and beyond, where public realm improvements have been progressed, and particularly those that have delivered a 25mm curb, and whether that has been considered sufficient demarcation. The design team working on the future High Street project have also drawn our attention to a judicial review on this matter, and that is from February 23. This particularly looked at the 25mm curb and whether that is an acceptable solution or not. We sought our own internal legal advice on this and what this means for this project, and again that's set out at 4.14. The advice is summarised in that the two pieces of government guidance above still stands in law and weren't quashed by the court in this judicial review. And in the judicial review, the government referenced research being undertaken into the 25mm curb height reference with an update likely during the year, which the council should be aware of and may want to take account of early. In providing the advice also, our legal team were clear to remind us of our duty under the Equality Act and the need to take into account all parties' interests when we're considering development. So, a shared level surface offers the opportunity for public realm improvements, and as I said earlier in the report, the business spill out into the public realm, but only whilst the streets are pedestrianised for part of the day. And that level surface does present a number of risks. And I set those out for you at 4.16, but I will repeat them. So whilst only guidance, the RNIB information is clear that they wish to see a technical curve. In considering the advice of the RNIB, we must also have regard to our duties in the Equality Act. I also need to make members aware and remind you that government guidance is being reviewed for these cases and could change as the project progresses. And finally, that the County Council need to see detailed designs, that means the stage 4. And whilst in your report I have told you that that should be supported by a mobility audit and healthy streets assessment, the County Council officer has reminded me that that isn't mandatory. There are other assessments available, but it's some supporting information. We need to come forward with that stage 4 before they will comment further. And it could result in them not adopting the street going forward, which would result in additional maintenance liabilities for us. So in regards to all of that, we think there are a number of options that we'd like members to consider this morning. The first is that we continue with the level shared surface for which is Road Cross Street, having regard to the risks that we set out to you. We could, as an alternative, progress a scheme of public realm improvements across Fraser Street with the curb height of 25mm, but I've drawn your attention to the judicial review and the fact that that is being reviewed as to whether that's an acceptable curb height or otherwise. Option 3, that we progress a scheme of public realm improvements across Fraser Street, but with the standard curb height. Option 4 is that we put the scheme on hold and consider whether it would be possible to progress it and implement the complete pedestrianisation of Butchers Road Cross Street. But as we know, that does have its own difficulties. And option 5, that we take out this intervention altogether from the future High Street Fund project, but bearing in mind the benefits that we set out when we started this journey, in that it provided the opportunity to improve the public realm and link back to the river. The recommendations of the report, we're asking for your advice really, members, and to have a debate on the matter. So we are asking you to note the complexities of the design of the public realm improvements to the streets and the benefits and risks associated with it, and then noting that members to note the options A to E or 1 to 5 that I've just talked you through that are available to us, and to help decide which option to adopt or any other alternative solution that you would like us to consider. Thank you.
Councillor Prowse, and then we've got Councillor Ricky now.
Chairman, Corporal, we spent a lot of time on this, and I'm really grateful to the Regen board for their input as well. The bottom line is that we're spending this money on Barnstable for transformational change. We really must deliver not half a scheme, but a proper, complete scheme. So I want to make sure that we don't even think about option E. Because, you know, to do these other interventions in the Pan Market and Bedford Street without something that links them from the riverfront right back up to the inner relief road Alexander Road would be a nonsense. So E is completely out of the question. As a local authority, I think it would be unwise of us to take the risk in A and B to end up with a surface right through the middle of the town. It's going to be a maintenance, potentially a maintenance issue for the district council going forward. We need to work to find a solution that will be adopted. A curb scheme, which is, I think is option C, really defeats the object of what we're trying to do. And I think if you go on a quiet day and visit Cross Street, and you can see it desperately needs regeneration. It needs to have a lovely surface where people can enjoy and wander and dwell. And at the moment, it doesn't feel like that, does it, with curb pavements? I think that would be a real missed opportunity. So for me, Chair, reluctantly, it's got to be item D. And it doesn't put doing this at risk because we are putting our own capital into this scheme. And this, if it was at the end, would be wholly financed by us. So I think we, you know, reluctantly, I think I would suggest to colleagues that D is a sensible thing to do. Let's not go off half cock. Let's not put the council at risk financially and risk a judicial review whilst doing the 25 mil step. So reluctantly, I think D is the answer, to continue as our commitment to a proper decent scheme going across the town from sort of west to east, but that we put it on hold for now, and we work in partnership with the council. Let's get the cars out of the town centre. It's a misery, you know, at 4 o'clock when they come tearing up through. People that don't need to go through the town do it because they can. I think we need to pursue that, and I hope our colleagues on Hatton County Council and District can help us deliver some more of that. Then we can move forward, I think, with a proper scheme that will be transformational for the town centre, along with the fantastic works that are going on in the buildings, Chair. So that would be where I am.
Okay, well, that Councillor Knight.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Prowse's comments, I echo them entirely. I'm going to start with a question actually first. Point of information, if you like. In having a level shared surface, does that mean removing the pavements in Cross Street? I know it's an obvious answer, but and on the double leg and up on the right hand side of the Butchers Road all the way up.
Yes.
That remove the pavements.
Yeah.
That would be a.
Yeah, the current, sorry, Chair, the current scheme, the current scheme shows still a detectable curve, but it's level. So you still at the moment, but that wouldn't necessarily have to be the case. We can work through what that detailed design looks like. So it would be level. You would have no distinguished difference between where currently the vehicles are and the pavement.
Thank you. So the only reason I asked that is because for me, again, Councillor Prowse's comments notwithstanding with regard D, but that to me is the most attractive aspect of it. The fact that it RNIB, I read it, I understand it, and I always find it remarkable how brilliant people with a visual impairment manage to get through our streets at the moment, using their sticks and dogs and friends, etc. But just as important to me is people in mobility scooters and in chairs, and also people with prams. How frustrating it is with pavements all the time. It's a question of balancing it, and we've Barnstaple Town Council have been involved in these discussions for many years as well, and as such, I'm au fait with them. But what a great opportunity missed. But well, I wanted to see what the debate goes like. But if it's going to be D, it might well be D. But I'm very much attracted to A. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lever and Councillor Masker.
Thank you very much. I mean, as a named officer in an organisation that operates out of a building on Cross Street, to bear in mind what I'm going to say on the basis of that. But there's a couple of things. One is that I absolutely agree that the pedestrianisation of Cross Street and Butchers Road would be fantastic for the town. But we got to where we are on this scheme through consultation with traders on Butchers Road and Panny Market and on Cross Street. And my understanding is that the position where the two roads were open after 4 o'clock at night, before 10 o'clock in the morning, was something that was agreed with traders down there in Woodford for access. And if we're looking at full pedestrianisation, then you do need to bear in mind that there has been some quite meaty discussions with those traders about how they service their premises, because a lot of those premises don't have rear access. And the other thing that I think members ought to bear in mind is that, as with all capital projects, they don't get any cheaper if you put them on. And it's the same with HS2, that now, having embarked on this route and having, whether it's £1.3 million available, if we wait to change traffic orders, that 1.3 million won't buy what it buys today if we have to wait a year or 18 months down the line to for another traffic order, another round of consultation.
Councillor, you? Councillor Moss?
Chair, I just wondered, when you go to a train station, they have paving for blind people near the state platform edge. Is that not usable on the streets? Is that not acceptable if you have strips either side of the knobbly bits, so that if you've got a stick or you walk, I don't know, but it seems to be an acceptable form of safety measure for a train station, and that wouldn't impact too massively on the surface of the street.
So we specifically asked the RNE5B that question around tactile paving and whether tactile paving is something that we could incorporate as a sort of something that textually distinguished between the pavement and the highway outside of the pedestrianised hours. The view that came back was that ordinarily the tactile paving is used at crossing points, and so that to use it as something that distinguishes between pavement and highway would be confusing. We are seeing streets with level surface still coming forward. There's a scheme at Magdalen Road, which the County Council referred to in their statement, that's only recently come forward, and that involves different materials, so not just tactile paving, but also kind of materials that distinguish more readily between a pavement and a highway. So you're still effectively zoning an area for people. So there are options available. I guess that would have been pre this judicial review. So we just need to be mindful of the changing the government agenda as to where that might take us and the risks associated with that. But yeah, so we have explored tactile paving. At the moment, the RNIB is still raising concerns in that regard, but I think it's an improvement than to have just something flush that doesn't show a textual change.
Right, I've got Councillor Lane.
Leaders first.
She's on it. She's been.
Chairman, I support Councillor Rose. I think we need to get it right first before you decide to go forward with it. What do concern me a little bit is, I mean, as part of, I see the area in the high street where you're going to pedestrianise it as well. And you're talking about rumble strips, with the granite sets and that. Well, to me, you talk about, in the high street, in Cross Street, which is well, we're doing granite sets in that as well. Well, to me, generally, granite sets are not that good for people with pushchairs, wheelchairs, and that for accessing across it because of the granite sets. I'm just thinking, well, should we look at something slightly different in respect as well? Because, quite honest with you, I think really people shouldn't push because they still use the main high street as walking, not walking down the footpath.
Yeah.
When it's closed, they walk down the road.
Yeah.
In here, you've got granite sets and I think, well, is that something? And the same applies when you go in from High Street into Butchers Road. You've got granite sets. People will use the main street, regardless whether it's 100 mil, 110 mil difference. But there's also other ways you can look at it because you can colour the tarmac. I think you did mention colour the tarmac. You can colour. I mean, you want to make it look better. use coloured tarmac because that is, you know, you're trying to make it a person idea of it, and you can do it quite easily with even coloured tarmac.
Yeah, so I mentioned in the report that we've been through a number of iterations of this. And we started off with kind of a heritage-led scheme, which had significant amounts of granite vets, because that's a kind of heritage treatment that you see in town. But for all those reasons, Councillor Lane, talking to Barnstable Regeneration Board, talking to the local accessibility group, etc., it was really pared back, and also the county council wouldn't have been willing to adopt something with all of those. What we've now got is principally a coloured surface, and it will need to change, because I think actually a blanket surface wouldn't be acceptable. But the curve line that you see is the existing curve line, which is existing granite curve, albeit at the level. And then there are now reduced granite sets, which is there. We've had, because it's not fully pedestrianised, so vehicles will be using, those sets are seen as a way on those key points of slowing traffic. So we've pared it right down, the use of that material, but it's now in reduced amounts, just to act as a traffic calming measure on the key points, and also to tie in Pages Lane, which is the one of the oldest, sort of an old street in Barnstable, and also Market Street. So we have given quite a lot of thought to the use of that material and reduced it quite significantly for all the reasons that you say.
Thank you. Right, I've got Councillor Bell, and then Councillor Walker, and Councillor Crabbe. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Because I've had increasingly reduced mobility in the last couple of months. I understand the suggestion of having a little bit of a pause going on while we get these details right, but to carry on as we are, as it says in option A, speaking to Devon County Council with regard to the adoption of these roads and with the RNIB, just to get their input, how quickly can that be done to move us forward rather than having to wait? And as Councillor Lee says, you know, costs are going to escalate if we carry on holding, and we get less done for more time. Can we get these things done expediently? Can we get Devon County Council to come back to us quickly? Can we get these things moved forwards without having to pause for any length of time?
So I think you mentioned both the RNIB and the County Council. We can continue talking to the RNIB, and they are they are providing us with advice rather than anything in statute. And we have ultimately they want to curb. That is what they are telling us, is that the only way to provide a safe surface for the visually impaired is to provide the curb. However, we can continue to work with them to provide a best case solution and take the risks that I referred to in the report. In terms of the County Council, the County Council want to see the detail now. So they're saying, move to REBA stage 4, let us see the detailed drainage strategy, let us see the detailed surface material, and then we'll work with you towards adoption. We've been reluctant to move to REBA stage 4 because until we've had this debate with members, because all of that costs money with the design team, we want to make sure that we're working in agreement with everyone, bearing in mind the risks I've mentioned, because what I can't do is tell you whether government guidance will change over the next 12 months, or indeed what the kind of solution will be. But we have a great working relationship with them, and we'll continue to work with them on a more detailed design if that's what one wants us to do.
Right. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, can I just say that 25mm curve is going to cause accidents because it's not a natural step. There are heights which are natural steps up. 25mm, an inch is not one of them. And you're going to find that even fairly mobile people are going to trip on it. It's going to be a trip hazard. And I completely understand where the RNIB are coming from. I've also done walks around the town with them, in inverted commas. I think the more important thing here is the fact that we currently have High Street, which isn't accessible to an awful lot of people. The block pavers at Green Lanes End are loose, which causes problems for both visually impaired, mobility impaired, parents with prams, everybody basically. Even the able-bodied I've seen trip over
edges of curves of pavers. So my suggestion would be to talk to the RMIB to come up with a tactile surface that will be acceptable. Because I understand that the different tactile surfaces mean different things. So where you've got the dot ones, it means it's a drop, it's a curve or a drop. Where you've got lines, it means there's a pedestrian crossing. It's they do mean things. So if we could come up with a different tactile surface that would mean change of pavement from pavement to road in a shared space, that could be a way forward. But I agree with Councillor Lever, this needs to be done sooner rather than later because we need an accessible high street. And I also agree with Councillor Lane that different coloured tarmac would help as well.
Thank you. Councillor Knight?
Yeah, I just coming back onto the finance aspect, as everybody knows, building materials, doing anything at the minute. It just is going to increase in cost. So if we've got a budget, then we may see later down the line that we've delayed slightly on the highway surface, then other things might have to go later.
Thank you.
Chair, if I can just come back on that one. Obviously, the £1.3 million that was referred to obviously was the budgeted price, which obviously has been costed for the scheme. That does include price inflation and contingency as well. So there is that built into that budget. And obviously there is a timeline as to when we were expecting to spend that. There's no timeline in terms of government funding because obviously that's all coming from our funding rather than the £6.5 million Future High Streets Fund. So we will work within that 1.3 million, taking into account the work that obviously Sarah Jane has outlined those options. The one plus side is obviously because that's not taking place, i.e. now, with interest rates being higher, when we do actually take that borrowing on, we anticipate interest rates to be starting to come down, especially with the longer term borrowing. So actually the optimum time to take on that borrowing will hopefully be better for us, even if there is a slight delay to when that will take place.
Councillor Crowell?
Just to pick up a couple of points that's been back around the room, really. Councillor Prowse referred to I think the report refers to the risk of non-adoption. I mean, I don't think council need to be frightened of the risk of non-adoption because even if you vote for A, as the officer has just said, you will be negotiating with ECC to find an adoptable scheme. So that's it. Well, this whole process beggars belief, isn't it? But I think we're probably going to drift. My view is we probably drift towards D, but I mean, it's disappointing drift. I'm somewhere between A and D, Chair, but I don't think it needs to. I mean, the threat of this risk of adoption, I think it's just a piece of decoration for the conversation.
Yeah, on a point of order, I just want to report what the advice that we've been given at the regeneration board. Very clear advice from the county about the possibility of not adopting.
Yeah, if you.
I mean, it has been.
Station village or something.
Yeah, Paul, Councillor, all I'm saying is that the officers, seniors at the county are sitting around the table saying that there are risks around this. And especially if you've got the threat of a legal situation like this. I mean, who would adopt it?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just content.
Just very quickly, Sarah Jane, have we indication at all about when the government's likely to report back on this particular issue? I know you've said that they're looking at it, et cetera, et cetera. Is it something that you think might be fairly imminent, or is it something that's going to be sort of kicked down into the long grass, or will be in a few years' time rather than something that's likely to be in the next year or so?
I don't know, Councillor Warden, but all I do know is that when the court considered the judicial review, they referred to the end of the year in terms of when they see that advice coming forward, but I don't have any personal indication.
Yes. I mean, my personal situation on this one is I'd like to see this go ahead, but I am concerned about the risk. And if we're not careful, we could get ourselves into a situation where we've got to redo the whole situation again or pay ongoing costs. And that would be obviously a lot more than what we budgeted for. So I think we should still continue with negotiations, but I'm not sure about actually doing the work at this particular stage. I think that a short pause might be the way forward, although I'm reluctant to say that.
Councillor Beardman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think David probably just said the same as me, being on date, and I think John, reassured us, I think I was listening to Peter and others about the cost going up, but clearly the risk in 4.16, like David just, it could be a much bigger risk if the government, if we get that government advice. So I think, the damn we do, don't really. So I think, again, I'm happy with going on with D, to be honest, and it seems a bit of a safer option. And I am concerned about the closure, the complete nationalisation of it, because like I say, those businesses, they need to get stock in, but they do know, and people, at certain times of the day, pop by and pick up or buy something, on a classic example, when we dog food, and pick that time before 10 o'clock to go. Don't do that.
I've got somebody trying to jump off a seat at the bike, but normally we're not allowed. What we're going to do is, what I'll do is I have to ask members to suspend the meeting if I let a member of public speak. So what I'm going to do, I'll ask members if we've got a trader on Butchers Row who wants to say something. Do I have a proposer to suspend? Yeah, seconded. All in favour? Right, so the meeting is suspended to allow Mr. Burridge to, would you like to stand up?
Just very quickly, you've all got great points. So the level surface, I think will work. With, like, I know you say granite columns won't work. They will, because as we've had many discussions, you need the visual thing. The texture, they use Braille, don't they? That's a flat surface with texture on it, yeah. So the RNIB, go back to them with that. So you use Braille. The strands are all the same. Every town you go to is level. They've got texture. If you, between the granite columns, if you use like the white line paint they use with sparkles, so at night it will lights up. Put all that in favour. But the 25 will step won't work. Wheelchairs, pushchairs. I pick up quite a lot of people with our broken wrists. It's dangerous. The service you've already got is awful. It really, you talk about don't spend money. And just truly for the town, everybody, the regeneration is working brilliantly. I get so much feedback that will make a lot of difference. Possibly coloured tarmac would work as well. But you're working brilliantly. But you've got to engage with the public. You've all got very relevant points, but all my points are so relevant. Brilliant.
How would it impact on you if we went with option D, total pedestrianisation?
For me personally, I really, really want to see it. I can see all the benefits for it. If it waits, again, I've been in business all my life, 40 years plus, it costs for everyone. You're not going to make any savings by putting it off. But the other thing you've got to take into account as well, you've already got some loading all the way up. What's going to happen is that planning market people, you can't shut the town down completely. Maybe 9 to 5, possibly. The readers, I listen to them every day, believe me. They need space. What we've already got with the scaffolding been on the left-hand side of Butchers Road, people are now starting to park in front of our shops, under the canopies. So the other thing you've got to take into account with level road, level surface, you've got to sort of decide on possibly some loading areas and then disabled parking. I believe there's plenty other parking, but there are some spaces at the end of Butchers Road, Croix Street. Again, when we've got your level surface with your highlighted curb line, somehow you've got to work that in loading areas so we don't get people parking all over the place. That's my bit. So thank you very much for the speech.
Thank you. So now I just wanted to give you the opportunity to speak.
Yes,
so
thank you.
We'll formally reconvene the meeting. So now we are back as a committee. And therefore we've all had some relevant points there to suggest. I'm picking up really then that we do want the scheme obviously to go ahead. I'm picking up between A and D I'm not picking out any options unless any committee member can correct me. But I'm looking at options A and options D. But we haven't had a formal proposal unless councillor Prowse would like to put a proposal forward.
Chair, listening to the debate, I mean, is there a way we can amend D to allow so that the option of the full pedestrianisation and the continued negotiations happen? And I think that's what I would propose, and I think that'll meet both views, so that we're not, I think there's a view with D that you put it off and put it to the end of the project completely, it may never happen. And then, you know, so if we could put an amendment that allows for D, but with, rather than saying going definitely for complete removal, but that, I mean, I still believe that is the answer. But that is one of the options we're going to pursue, along with negotiations with the county council, so that we can move things forward.
Okay, can I ask the chief executive to word that up for us, please?
Yeah. I think probably what Councillor Price is saying is going with option D, which is the full pedestrianisation, but noting the preference to design a scheme that doesn't impose the maintenance liability on the council, but which takes into account representations from access groups in the movement.
And I think for me, Chair, the problem with the traffic is that everybody goes and use it. And listen to Steve, I mean, what he's saying is we need to have some sort of access at some times. So it's not beyond the will of man to work out a way of access only for deliveries. And, you know, it is about enforcement. We know that because of the Strand.
Yeah.
You know, unless you've got adequate enforcement, these orders don't work.
Yeah.
But, you know, let's carry on talking and seeing if there's a halfway that gets rid of the majority of the traffic.
And it's still between 10 and 4.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And in that way, Chair, if we open the discussions around full pedestrianisation, if that is taking too long, then it allows us to explore the options under A. But equally, if when we explore option A, it becomes clear that there is going to be a maintenance liability on us, then it means we've got the efforts into pedestrianisation. Yeah. It gives us that flexibility to flip between the two, really. But ultimately, if pedestrianisation can't happen within a reasonable period of time, then you know, it looks like what members are saying is they want to explore option A.
Yeah. All right, Councillor Knight.
That's a point of information, really. I don't really know what the maintenance liability means.
Means that the district council would have to carry on with the maintenance of those roads going forward, when actually it's a county adopted road at the moment.
Yeah. Right.
Which can lead into thousands and thousands of pounds.
Talking millions.
Millions, yes, yeah.
If I could actually second that, because I do feel that gives us the flexibility. And it doesn't stop the whole process, but you know, we continue to do what we can at this particular stage. And so,
Right, so
I think it's a sensible concept.
thank you, Councillor Warden. So we've got Councillor Prowse proposing, seconded by Councillor Warden. All in favour of option D, amended by what the Chief Executive has said?
D brackets A.
D brackets A.
Yeah, the amended versions.
Composite.
So all in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? I'm going to abstain, obviously, because I'll be the one from it's my ward on the county, isn't it? So I'll abstain on that. So that actually that's been carried with 3 abstentions. Thank you, members. Thank you, SJ.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Item 9. Item 9, thank you. Item 9, Cultural Development Fund. SJ, you take this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay. So, members, I want to really bring the Cultural Development Fund to your attention via this report. So, in 2022, members will be aware that we adopted the Northern Devon Cultural Strategy, known as Flourishing Culture. The cultural strategy came forward to help deliver sort of culture right across northern Devon. And this external funding, the Cultural Development Fund, was applied to help implement part of that strategy. Following a successful two-stage funding bid led by the culture manager, we were awarded £3 million to deliver a range of capital and revenue projects to, as I say, aid the implementation of that cultural strategy in Barnstable. The award funds a number of interventions, which is set out at paragraph 4.3, but I will run through them. The first is capital works to fund the refurbishment of the Listed Bridge Chambers building in Barnstable to create an accessible performing arts, learning and performance space. It also includes capital work to fit out 36 Badcourt Street, complementing the regeneration that's coming forward as part of the Future High Streets Fund. Capital to invest in public art, streetscapes and wayfinding. For information, that element is 700,000. Revenue funding support 3 fixed term posts, and those posts are described in paragraph 4.7. So roles for a cultural producer to create cultural activity across Barnstable, and 2 project officers focusing on community and sector support. Revenue funding also to commission activities and events, and also a programme of festivals and activities. The fund is supplemented by £150,000 of match funding by the Bridge Trust and £500,000 from ourselves, because money that has also already been committed as part of the Future High Street Fund programme. In the report at 4.6, I say that an inception meeting will happen with the Arts Council. That has now happened. We met with them for the morning of the 23rd of June. That included their national director for capital bids. They came and they had a look around the town, including Badcourt Street and Bridge Chambers. We were interviewed effectively in our ability to implement these funds, and they are happy. I am pleased to report that we can do so. There are partners involved in this bid. They are named at 4.6. They are the Bridge Trust, as you would expect, but also Barnstable Town Council, Beacon Arts and Petrock, all who will utilise this space and have delivered the fund. We will have to enter into partnership agreements with those partners. The most important one of those will be the Bridge Trust, because we will be the recipients of the funding, and the partnership agreement that we will have with them will be passing the responsibilities that are set out in our funding agreement over to them. And it also includes security, which is a 20-year covenant on those buildings for the use that the funds will bring forward. So just taking you back to the recommendations in the report. So it's a note to the award of the fund, but it's also to delegate authority to myself and to Director of Resources and Deputy Chief Exec to enter into those partnership agreements that I just referred, so with those 5 partners. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I have got Councillor Bearman and Councillor Ward. Councillor Bearman.
Did you want to say? No, for sure. Yeah, sorry, I put my hand up before I realised my mouth was. But anyway, I mean, yeah, I was just going to say, this is amazing, wasn't it? I mean, what work that's gone on, and you know, I mean, Alison Mills and the team here is fantastic. I'm just really quite impressed. It's the first time I've really read in depth about it, so I just wanted to thank everybody involved with it. It's quite an amazing opportunity for Barnstable on top of everything else. So, yeah. Sorry,
thank you.
That's exactly the sort of thing I was going to say as well. This is absolutely brilliant. Very jealous. I'd like some of this in South Molton, of course, but there we go. But if it's in Barnstable, that's great. The flourishing culture idea is something that I'm very passionate about, and you know, I'm very happy to move the recommendations or Frank, whichever. But this is something that will actually do a lot of good for North Devon and the cultural side of things. And Alison Mills is doing a fantastic job, and we're all very, very grateful for this. This is superb news. Really good.
Thank you, Councillor Warden. Councillor House?
Chair, you know, as a trustee, fairly recent trustee of the British Trust, I know the history of the, you know, British Chambers buildings, and the Trust were struggling to find a new use for them. And this is just a fun, I mean, that building, if you haven't been in the building, it's worth making the effort to go up into the old Magistrates Court and looking across the Strand. It is a building that's crying out for this sort of use, because there is no commercial type use that would ever really take it up in my view. But I was going to say what you've already said about. I just think we ought to minute our thanks to Alison. I know she's part of SJ's team and she's the lead, but we know that it's Alison's work, and you know, I think we ought to recognise that. And yeah, it's the second time she's produced a fantastic bit, and I know she's involved in looking at Ilfracombe Museum to see if we can find a solution. So that's her next priority, and she does it with enthusiasm and without any side to her. So I think it's worth us just noting that in a minute, Chair.
Councillor Ricky Knight.
I had to join in the eulogy of praise for this. It's so exciting. And the reason I say this is because when I first became a British Trust trustee in 2007, that was when I first sort of broke through into this locked door and discovered this chamber. It's the most amazing room. I can't believe how much in need of regeneration it was. So the fact that it's going ahead, thanks to Alison and thanks for support from NDC. Just a couple of quick questions. Can it be confirmed that this area is not just for people, that's brilliant, but also for public use potentially, it probably is true. And also, that more complicated, what percentage of the units in Bradford Street will be if like dedicated for cultural reasons and sort of workshops, etc.? Is that a fair question?
Yeah, sure. In terms, so the bid was all about encouraging cultural provision. So BFID are a conduit to that delivery, and as part of that, sit within the British Chambers to deliver that. But it will be used for broader purposes. Petrol are also involved in that space as well. So I see that being available to the public to utilise. And as I say, BFID are there to help deliver that performing arts vision that is set out in the fund. In terms of Bradford Street, we're going through at the moment who will be the tenants of that building moving forward. But what the fund is looking for, and similarly Future High Street, is that being the visual arts hub. Yeah. So we don't have tenants secured for that building yet. We're talking to a whole number of partners about it. So I can't be categorical in my response, but the vision is that it be that visual arts hub delivered out of Bradford Street. That's Bradford Street.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so the proposal has been put forward and seconded. The recommendations 2.1 and 2.2 with the amendment of specifically saying thank you to Alison Mills for her contribution and superb work in putting in for this successful bid. So all in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. We'll now let Councillor Lever back in. Someone can let him know that we allow him back in.
Yeah.
I did say we would make that item last 2 hours, so yeah, to stand outside for 2 hours. Yeah. Right. Welcome, Councillor Lever. Item 10, Seven Brethren Project Land Release Fund and Update, pages 109 to 118. Report by Head of Place, Property and Regeneration attached. Sarah Jane. Okay, what is it this week?
Yeah, so this is an update report, members, but there are also a number of key points that I particularly need you to note and to ensure that you're happy with. Again, it's a project that many of you will be very familiar with, but I will take you back just to some principles, just for those that might not be. So in November 2017, we were awarded £2.2 million of land release fund, and that was to help bring forward residential development at Severn Brethren. In terms of where we've got to with that project, so hybrid planning permission for the provision of a replacement long-stay car park and temporary toleration site, that being the detailed element, and for 180 dwellings together with all associated infrastructure, that element being in outline was granted on the 15th of November 2022. Since then, on the 7th of December last year, NDCC entered into a development agreement with Tarka Living Limited to deliver both the enabling works and the delivery of those homes on Severn Brethren. Just for clarity, the site for residential development comprises the old leisure centre site, the long stay car park, events area, existing toleration site, and the Tarka overflow car park. The new long stay car park will be sited adjacent to the HMP pictures, next to the existing Tarka leisure centre. The enabling works that I refer to are the demolition of the old leisure centre, provision of a new long stay car park and temporary toleration site, and the erection of flood defences along the Tor. For the avoidance of doubt, those flood defences are many of those defences that were required as a result of the Anchor Wood development, and there is a contribution from the Anchor Wood development that will help bring these forward. The development agreement that I told you that we entered into was conditional for 3 reasons. The first, the submission of reserved matters. The second, the provision of a plan identifying the location of the affordable housing that would be delivered on this site, and that is 30% affordable housing with a split of 30% shared ownership and 70% social owned units. Just again, for clarity, they are being delivered through the development agreement and not the Section 106 agreement. And the third point is that we had to be agreed heads of terms with that registered provider. On the 28th of February this year, the reserve matters application was submitted in joint name between Tarka Living Limited and ourselves. We have received that plan identifying the location of those affordable housing, and we've also seen evidence of the agreed heads of terms that Tarka Living have with Live West, who will be the identified registered provider on this site. So following compliance with those conditions, the agreement went unconditional on the 28th of February. And for the funding terms, that meant that the land was released. That was the key milestone for us in terms of ensuring securing that funding. Then, in accordance with the development agreement, that first lease was granted 20 working days after the unconditional agreement, and that constitutes the old leisure centre and short stay car park. And we also received the first payment at that time. Prior to the commencement of the enabling work starting on site, we had to appoint a compliance inspector for the enabling work. That has been done. And the enabling works have commenced in the form of site clearing works on the proposed car park, and those have been done under a watching brief of the ecologist. A joint delivery board has been established as required by the agreement, which comprises 3 officers from the NDC and 3 from the development partner, and we're currently meeting bi-weekly on the project. It has been hoped that the new car park site would be ready for September, so that it would accommodate the fair for this year. The design of the car park is reaching RIBA stage 4, and the contractor is about to be appointed, but it won't be ready for this year's fair. And we have notified both Barnsley Town Council and the Showman's Guild of this. And we are meeting the Showman's Guild next Monday, the 10th, to talk about the site for this year's fair. We have yet to enter into the JCT design and build contract for the car park, as the details are being finalised. But a contract between Tarka Living and the demolition contractor has been entered into, and those works will start this month. The works to the flood defences are in design, and we await a programme for those. Just in terms of the fair, so notwithstanding it remaining on site for this year, we do need to enter into a new licence with Barnsley Town Council. And And that needs to happen in advance of these two being entered into, because that's effectively the current site. We've been working with Barnstaple Town Council and the Showman's Guild since the inception of this project, knowing that finding a site for the fair was critical to it. And on the 29th of March 21, Barnstaple Town Council at its meeting declared that, subject to detailed spec, that the needed proposed site was a suitable alternative for the fair. That's at 4.19 of your report. So negotiations have been taking place with Barnstaple Town Council on the new licence, and the agreed term is for a period of 25 years with a review clause. The period of occupation is as set out in the previous licence. Barnstaple Town Council requested a termination clause as within the existing licence at 4.23. And just for confirmation, so we are seeking delegated power to negotiate and finalise that licence, given its that exceeds delegated power as part of this report. Within the development agreement, there is also an obligation on the development partner to take out an environmental insurance policy. We have seen that draft policy, and the detail of that is coming forward to you later. Following the submission of the reserve matters application, a number of queries have been received, which is normal for a major application. We have since met with the planners and the developers to discuss amendments required. I've since seen draft details as of the end of last week, and anticipate those being submitted to the planners as soon as possible. The reserve matters application, just for the avoidance of doubt, will be determined by planning committee, given that it's interim name. The current programme and indeed within the development agreement shows the residential start date of November 23. It is anticipated that this will be delayed given the status of the enabling works. I have, since writing this report, seen an amended draft programme, and although that will need to be agreed at the joint delivery board, it's looking like residential start date at 1st of April 24. The residential development will be delivered in 4 phases, and the freehold transfer of each phase will occur when the last dwelling in that phase and all associated work reach golden brick. Just taking note of the recommendations. So first of all, I just wanted you to note the progress on this site. What I'm also asking at 2.2 though is for members to provide delegated powers to myself in conjunction with the leader and lead member for Strategic Planning and Economic Development to first of all enter into the licence with Barnstaple Town Council based on the principles set out in this report, and as I mentioned when going through the report, but also in consultation with the Chief Visitor Monitoring Officer to enter into a contract for the delivery of the new long-stay car park. That's the JCT design and build contract that I read. That in consultation with the Chief Visitor and Monitoring Officer, that we can enter into that second lease for land at Seven Brethren, and I provided the lease plan appendix A to you for this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Warden.
Yeah, I would like to say thank you to Sarah Jane for all the work that she's been doing on this. I would like to move the recommendation as we've got in front of us. It's been really good to get the update today, even for us older members, from the point of view of being on the authority for a long time, because obviously things are moving, and which is really good. And I think you presented it really well to us today, so thank you for that. And yes, we need to go forward with the recommendations that you've put forward in item 2. So I'd like to move it.
Do I have a seconder for that? No. Councillor Bell?
Thank you very much. It is fascinating. Thank you. It makes things a lot clearer for me. I have one question, if you don't mind, with regards to the 180 houses and the 30% affordables. Do you know in which phase that's likely to be delivered?
So I have got the phasing plan. They're sort of pepper potted throughout, but Council Bell, if it's possible, I'll bring that later and provide it to you.
Do I have a second? Councillor Mann, you seconded?
I will do.
Oh, right.
Pleasure, but I have a question or comment.
Oh, right, yeah, got Councillor Mann.
Thank you. With my eco hat on, I'm going to refer to the flood prevention stating the obvious, but I'm new, so I'll state the obvious as if it's fresh for me. The whole point of Anchor Woods, one of the reasons it went forward is because there was a promise to introduce flood preventions from the downstream bridge right the way up to the Iron Bridge. And I can see just about in the plans here that that's ongoing. I don't know if it goes as far as the old railway bridge, Taunton Bridge. I always worry about building on floodplains, so do a lot of people. And I remember when the Petroff scheme was given to us, we found it was on stilts, you know, to take into account rising water levels. And that fell through. This is coming back decades, isn't it? This is where we've dumped all our rubbish, and there's plenty of gas there. There's plenty of references to that. And I looked at the insurance policy, and that's how sad I am. I've actually tried to read the insurance policy because it's fiendish as well.
Yeah,
I just wanted to.
I just said that's part of.
But I'm not that I'm admitting to that. No, I haven't seen it at all. You're right. So, how high is high enough? You know, we often talk about worst case scenarios, and we're insulating ourselves to the worst case scenario with regard to the development of the new Longstate car park. But how high is high enough to prevent rising water levels into the next century? It's not completely rhetorical because I know you considered it.
Okay, yeah, I mean, all I can say, Councillor Knight, is that we've been working with the Environment Agency since the beginning of the project. I don't know who knows, but the Environment Agency are happy both with the height of the defence, but then we also have to raise the level of the land, so it's twofold. So you'll have the flood defence wall and bank, which defends both the site but also that part of the town. And then you have to raise the levels on the site to a finished floor level. I'm going to, at some point, something I need to confirm to you to get what that is, but I don't have the detail here today.
Councillor Beeman? You second it?
I'll second it.
You have attention.
Thank you so much. So I've got a propose and a second that we go over and make recommendations. All in.
Just a very, very quick question. Are we confident? I'm just familiar with the current economic climate. Do we suspect that this will be going ahead in leaps and bounds? I mean, certainly reporting to independent. We've not had anybody getting depressed or smoking out windows or anything like that in any of your meetings, no?
Yes, but I mentioned that we've got the joint delivery board between the two parties.
Yeah.
No inclination to date. John is part of that too, so I don't know if you're there, but they've been to date.
Yeah, there's been no indication at all. Obviously, as Sarah Jane said, we meet bi-weekly, so nothing's come out of those meetings, given any concern there.
And you haven't started smoking, John.
So, yeah, their development appraisal does build in quite a significant level of contingency and cover as well, so they seem very comfortable.
Well done, SJ.
So we got the propose and a second. I'll do it again now. All in favour?
Yes.
That's unanimous. Thank you. And now we move on to item 11, exclusion of press and public and restriction of documents. Does somebody recommend it?
I can move that.
Yeah, seconded. All in favour? You going part B? Thank you. Right, just wait for there to switch it off.